Hello everyone and welcome to The Theorist. I'm your host, JC Botero67. Now, I have no way of really knowing if you guys can tell a difference with my voice or not. Let's just say it was a crazy awesome weekend that I had last weekend. I went to the Zed show. He's a house music artist. I had mentioned him in another review, my latest Dancing with the Stars review. So I'm like in love with him and his music. So I got to go to a show, and I yelled like a nut and sang at the top of my lungs. Then I did some more singing that week for, like, church choir. And then, some stressful things happened in my life. So, I think that all kind of came together and brought this, cold down on me. So, unfortunately, I'm a little sick. But, I'm pulling through with this, because this is a ton of fun, and you guys are my motivation. So I thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and get started with the Chapter 12 review of Anime Kujo's Revelations. So, I was right about Sebastian being the one that Ciel saw at the end of Chapter 11, where, he grew wide-eyed and was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it turns out that Sebastian was fine. For the most part, he was in a good state. He did have, a pretty long scratch on his abdomen, but by the time Ciel ran back to check on him, he probably had it pretty healed up. So moving along, Ciel basically walks Sebastian back to his dorm and proceeds to take care of him, clean up the wound, bandage it, instead of going to the hospital, because Sebastian said, oh, I'm fine, it's nothing, if it gets worse, we'll go ahead and go. So, Ciel kind of reluctantly agreed to that. And it was funny to me, because at one point, Sebastian points out, besides, you make an adorable nurse. So I thought that he would add more to that, and kind of imply, that kink of his partner dressing up before doing it. So, I thought that's what he was gonna do, or say. But no, not yet. We don't know. Maybe down the road. So yeah, that'd be kind of cute. I don't think I've read a fanfic where Ciel has dressed up, as a nurse or whatever. So, it'd be kind of cool to see that happen. Maybe that's my secret kink. Who knows? But moving on. Ciel seeks an explanation. He keeps asking questions about what happened, and Sebastian's kind of avoiding it, kind of giving, vague answers. So then he's like, okay, I'm gonna tell you the truth. So I'm gonna read this portion of the chapter. It might be a bit lengthy, so I do apologize. But it's definitely worth it. I started by breaking the one with the scythe's wrist. Once the bone snapped, he released the weapon. He stated calmly, as if he were giving instructions on how to use the washing machine. Next, I tripped the second one by shattering his ankle with the heel of my boot. As he fell backwards, I reached over and tore that useless appendage from its joint and flung it somewhere into the woods. Ciel's jaw dropped in shock as he continued. The third idiot might have been a bit smarter than the rest, since he actually tried to choke me. Sebastian rolled his eyes at the memory before meeting the student's frightened gaze again. Well, let me just say that he is going to have a pretty hard time clapping with only one arm now. So Ciel is just in shock still, and, he does not buy this story at all, and he's like, oh, that's not humanly possible, who are you kidding? So then Sebastian's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not true. Of course it's not humanly possible. He's having a ball with all these reactions that he's getting out of Ciel. But he basically tells him, oh, I beat up one of them, and then the other two ran away like scared little schoolgirls or something like that. But, what Sebastian told him at first may have actually happened. And, we can't discard that possibility because 1, he's a demon. 2, he's over 1,000 years old. And 3, he's the general of Hell's army. So, come on. Tearing some other demon's limb from his body is not to be unexpected, if that makes any sense. But yeah, getting back to my point that I want to make is, if that did happen to the triplets, I do want to see how Hannah would react. So, we might see that next chapter, or sometime down the road, but pretty soon. Anyway, now this was not in the story. I don't know if you guys follow Anime Kujo on Facebook. Her Facebook username is Nessa Kujo. And so she will share the link to the fanfiction website, in like her latest chapter. And that being said, I wanted to share with you the status that went along with that post. And it basically says, how do you spell love? S-M-U-T. You're welcome. So I loved that. I even commented on her status and said, oh, I smutted it, meaning I loved it. So that was pretty fun. But anyway, I was wrong when I said that chapter 11 potentially was going to be a smutty chapter. As you guys might recall, I think I mentioned it in like 2 reviews of all the Revelations reviews I've done so far. So in 2 of them I was like, oh yeah, there's going to be a scene like chapter 9 or chapter 11. So I was a chapter off. I think I was off with chapter 9 too. I think it ended up being chapter 10 or something. So it happens. I just made my predictions a bit too early, I guess. Alrighty, and then of course the scene happens. And at one point, Ciel tells Sebastian that he loves him. And he tells him that twice. And so Sebastian kind of seizes what he's doing and is just confused at hearing this because he was not expecting it at all. And, I guess Ciel kind of realized, okay, maybe it's a little too soon for him, but, in due time, he'll return the feelings. So Ciel's kind of like, oh, just, keep doing what you're doing. So eventually that ends, and this is one of the last things that Sebastian thinks before we make it into the last scene of the chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you guys. Tomorrow he would think of how to deal with these troublesome feelings. However, tonight, Sebastian would allow himself to fall victim to Ciel. Tonight, he would let himself fall in love. So when I first read that, I had tears brimming at the corner of my eyes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, he's slowly starting to fall for Ciel. He really is, and he fails to realize it, or at least just doesn't want to admit it. But, it's... oh, man. I don't know. I think this fanfic is really going to be a tearjerker for me down the road. I don't know why. And I've probably mentioned this before too, I don't see this ending happily. I don't. Either one of them's going to die, or both of them might die, and it'll turn into like a tragic Romeo and Juliet thing. So, I don't know. There have been so many twists with this story, and there's more to come, so, I might be wrong. But anyway, we'll go ahead and finish this up with the last scene of the chapter, which was a nightmare that Ciel had. It was basically kind of like a replay of the scene that had just taken place between Ciel and Sebastian. And Ciel starts to stop Sebastian because he realizes it isn't him. Like, we all the readers know that it's Sebastian in his demon form. But Ciel is not aware of that. He thinks it's some monster that's on top of him now, and he's like, you're not Sebastian, and he's calling out to him and whatnot. And that's how the chapter ends, with that nightmare. So, I'm kind of thinking, okay, like, next chapter, are we going to see him telling Sebastian about that nightmare he had in the morning, or kind of keeping it to himself, or will he go and consult with Spears or Aloise? That's another option as well. So, we'll see what happens with that. But speaking of Spears, I did want to point out something that I read in chapter 12 that just had me like, whoa, like, I know that it's not true, but, I'm gonna go ahead and read this, and, you guys tell me, okay, what you thought when you first read this pair of sentences. So this is Ciel. All my life, I have wanted to feel passion for another person, he explained, picking at the bedspread aimlessly. After my parents died, I started seeing Father Spears. For counseling. For counseling, guys. Okay? And that was my mistake, because I read that first part, like, seeing not doctor, he's not a doctor in this, seeing Father Spears, and I failed to see the for counseling part until I actually read it, and I was like, oh, okay, whoa, okay, there we go. Because, see, I am just so, I don't know what my issue is, that I'm just so into this Cielium Spears-Ciel pairing. I don't know if I'm, like, the only, like, little nutcase that likes this pairing, or if there's anyone else out there, so please, I welcome you to comment, private message me, whatever, and let's just share this love together. Because I love it. You know, I want to know who else is into this pairing, because I'm actually working on a fanfic. I mentioned that in a final review of another Black Butler fanfic. So I want to kind of get an idea of who's interested in the pairing and, you know, keep it going. My fanfic. But yeah, that being said, I think I'm just going to have a random mini segment to each of my Revelations reviews and just mention Celium. Because I end up doing it most of the time anyway. So, you know, I'll probably just mention the pairing name, you know, comparing it to, like, I don't know, some other unrequited love pairing, like Hannah Claude. There we go. See? Hannah Claude. They have, like, a Celium moment. I don't know if that makes any sense to people, because the first time I was introduced to... See, I have a mini segment going on now. The first time I was introduced to the CL William pairing was in Black Rose Eden's fanfic, Simply Meant to Be. Black Rose Eden, if you guys aren't aware, is basically Anime Cujo's best friend. So, they've worked together. In fact, Anime Cujo wrote a one-shot fanfic of CL Spears, you know, to kind of go hand in hand with the Simply Meant to Be story. So that was really interesting. And that's what got me into that pairing, because I would have never thought about it in a million years. It's like Lizzie Dagger. I never would have thought of that pairing, and I do like it. So it's interesting what people can come up with and get you into. And yes, the reason why I said Dr. Spears instead of Father Spears when I was reading that last quote that I read to you guys, it was because Spears, in the Simply Meant to Be fanfic, was Ciel's doctor. And so that was the mistake when I said that. But anyway, I will bid you farewell now. We're done with Celium, we're done with the Chapter 12 review, and I'm looking forward to Chapter 13. I hope something superstitious and cool happens, because that's what the number 13 is all about. So anyway, I'll let you guys go, and I'll see you in the next review.